Hey everyone. You know, I wanted to talk. I didn't know I was going to talk about this today, but I figured, with all the things people are saying about this topic that I started on various Sonic sites, Mobius Forum, KenPenders.com, Fans United for Saturday AM, SaturdayMorningSonic.com. A lot of people kind of bringing out their own kind of arguments and all that, or kind of own little, well, not arguments, but their own opinions about certain things. And, you know, I agree with most of them, because, well, I'm the one that started the topic, so, and there are some things that I will admit that I said are true. Now, some people will say that, um, now some people will say, and I'm sorry for the bird in the background. Now, some people will say that Ian Flynn doesn't ignore events, that he's more consistent than other writers. Now, I will give Ian credit. He does bring back certain characters and all that we haven't seen for a while. But what I was trying to ask in that topic, and I explained myself, is does Ian ignore certain past events and changes in characters? And when I say that I think he does, but he acknowledges them, there's sort of I know this sounds kind of weird, but it's kind of like kind of a combination of the two. You see, um, Ian Flynn basically acknowledges an event by having a character, well, in his stories, in his writing, basically has a character briefly mention the event in some ways, but at the same time, after they briefly mention it, and then he puts in a yellow panel, a little yellow box in the left-hand corner or right-hand corner of a comic panel, and says where this event takes place, basically what the issue it takes place in. After that, you don't hear about it anymore. I mean, I'll give you an example, and I'm sure, and I've used this example a lot, especially when I did my extra normal video on this, the extra normal with the characters and all that. When I did that, basically, what I said there is one of the events that I talk about a lot there is is the slap that Sally Acorn gave Sonic Hedgehog in 134. Now, Sally briefly mentioned this in issue 187, and then brought it up recently in issue 212. But after that, we don't hear about it anymore. Heck, between 187 and 212, we never heard about it since then. Never, not once. The only other event that Ian mentioned was in 212, right? Well, not 212, but in issue 200, issue 199 actually, it was issue 199, where they were talking about the Endgame saga, where characters like Bunny, Antoine, Tails, and even Sally brought up the Endgame saga, but that was it. That was it. Now, the difference between Ian and some other writers is that other writers, yeah, they'll do the same thing. They'll have characters bring up an event, briefly mention it, or have like a little yellow box in the left-hand or right-hand corner of a panel talking about it, but that's about it. But, sometimes that'll be about it, but sometimes they'll elaborate on it even more. That's the whole thing. They'll elaborate it on a little bit more in some other way. You know, they'll bring it up in issues afterwards. They won't just, you know, ignore it. You know? I mean, like, in issue 74, when Sally saw Sonic, you know, basically going after Robotnik at that time, if you will, saying that she had never seen him this angry. And Bunny and Antoine basically had to tell her that they have, and that was when they had, and that was basically when they all thought that she was dead, especially Sonic. Now, here's the other thing. Here's the other thing. That's mentioned as well. That is mentioned. And it's continually mentioned at times later on, but then after that, we don't hear about it anymore but when Ian takes over, we don't hear about it anymore. And there are other things too, like I mentioned, that, you know, other events and changes in characters that he ignores as well, besides that. I mean, like I said, Ken Penders and Carl Bowlers and writers like that, they have done the same thing, but they elaborate on it more, and they constantly remind us about it in issues to come. They don't wait, basically, I don't know how many issues, let's see, I guess 25 plus issues later, or 2 years later to bring it up. They don't wait almost 2 years later to bring it up. They constantly bring it up almost in every other issue, in every monthly issue, or every other issue. They would bring it up. For example, 175. 175, no, not 175, but issue 75. Issue 75. When we find out that the Robotnik behind the whole satellite deal was Robo-Robotnik, instead of just doing what Ian does, and, you know, have Robotnik just Robo-Robotnik briefly talk about how he came here, and then have like a yellow panel or so mentioning what issues to find it in. Instead, what does Ian do? Ian elaborates on it. Not Ian, but what does Ken do? Ken Penders and Carl Bowles, they elaborate on it. They elaborate. You know, they talk about how it happened, and, you know, they go into more detail. Ian doesn't do that. He just briefly has a character mention it in some way, have a little yellow box, and that's it. And then he forgets about it for a while, if not for good. I mean, I know another valid argument that some fans have is the whole Fiona deal. You know, some fans are upset at how Ian is just ignoring the fact that when Ken Penders and Carl Bowles wrote the book, when Ken and Carl were writing the book, they basically had Fiona have a change of heart. Instead of being bitter and everything towards Sonic, she had a change of heart when she saw him seemingly sacrifice himself to save Mobius. And then when he came back, she wanted to give him a chance as his girlfriend. What does Ian Flynn do? What is one of the first things Ian Flynn does? He waits basically about 9 issues. Well, actually, he doesn't wait. He waits 9 issues before, not 9 issues, but 8 issues or something like that before he says, okay, Fiona Fox, Sonic Hedgehog, no more. Fiona Fox still hates him. And oh, she's going with Scourge. And you think to yourself, when did this happen? When did this happen? You know, why do this now? Why change her back into a bad girl? Why have her now, like, basically portray her as someone that's on the edge of insanity or something? I don't know. Why do that? You see, that's what fans don't like about Ian sometimes, is the fact that he ignores what a character like Fiona, he ignores basically the change that she had, the heart change that she had, or the change of heart that she had when Carl and Ken were writing. He ignores it and says, okay, she's a bad girl now. Big deal. Big deal.